Yep, I can.
Good.
Hey, Marshall.
Hey, David. Good evening.
Evening. Go Braves.
Go Braves. That's right.
Marshall, can you hear me?
I can.
Good.
You take this first one for sure. Let's see. Marshall, our plan is to have H Gore to take the screen. I'll confirm that. Yeah, there's Bob now. Bob is probably going to be the one doing most of the pointing.
Okay.
We'll confirm that. I'll make sure he's got the latest deck. Hey, Bob.
Hey, guys.
Bob, do you have the latest deck? Should be a sheet.
Pulled up right now.
Yeah, you should have an email from me.
Yeah, I've got it.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got it pulled up and ready to share, even for whoever. So I guess I'm driving the whole thing. So
Yeah.
Marshall, when you're talking to anybody, just say next slide, and I'll roll on.
And Bob, make sure that deck is the one that has the key road photograph in it of the existing.
All right, hang on a second. I don't think it does.
Yeah, you should have an email from me. Let's see. Make sure I sent it to you. Yeah, from at 5:26.
All right, hang on a second. Let me get out of this one.
One starts with one last revision.
5:26. Well, I thought that's the one I had open. Let's see.
Yeah, it should be slide 17. That's the key road view.
Yeah, I've got it.
Okay,
We're good.
thanks.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We should be able to get started in just a couple minutes here. If we give everyone an opportunity to get on board here, see who all we have. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like we have reached the 6 o'clock hour. And it looks like I think we have almost everybody here. All right, well, my name is Allison Clark. I am the co-chair or the chair of the Atlanta Police Training Center's Community Stakeholder Advisory Committee. I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order here at 6 p.m. I'd just like to take a quick minute to acknowledge all of you for taking the time out of your schedules to join us tonight, those of you sitting on the committee, as well as those of you observing. Without further ado, I would like to go ahead and do a quick roll call to see who we have here. Marshall, are you available to jot down the roll call for me?
Yes, I can.
See you on there. There you are. Okay, perfect. There we are. I will start. Obviously, Allison Clark here. If you could just unmute yourselves and acknowledge your presence. Nicole Morato.
Here.
Okay. Patricia Culp.
Here.
Sharon Williams.
Here.
Sean Billingsley. Sean Billingsley?
I don't think he's on. I know he's recuperating from surgery.
Okay, fair enough. Tori Tucker
Here.
and Commissioner Larry Johnson or Miss Atwaters?
Yes, I'm present.
Good deal. And Lily Points, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name properly.
I'm present. It's Ponitz.
Ponitz. Okay, I will get that right next go around. Ann Phillips.
I'm present.
Wonderful. Shirley Nichols.
Present.
Okay. Ophelia Lee.
Present.
Thank you. Jacqueline Rainey.
Here. Present.
Thank you. Deputy Chief Sherbaum.
Here.
Thank you. First Deputy Chief James McLemore. Okay. Joyce Shepherd. Okay. Justin Johnson.
Clear.
Wonderful. And Michael Fears.
Hey, Allison, it also does look like Sean Billingsley has also joined.
Okay, wonderful. Sean, if you are here, please acknowledge.
I'm here.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us this evening.
And Allison, we have Amy Taylor, who's also serving with Starlight Heights here as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Amy. I appreciate your presence. All right. Well, moving forward, I would like to jump on board with our first item for the evening, which is the adoption of our agenda. Accordingly, I move to adopt the agenda. Can I get a second?
Second, Sharon.
I'm sorry, was that Sharon Williams?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And from there, I would like to open a vote. Yay from me, Allison Clark. Nicole?
Yes, yay.
Okay, Ms. Patricia Call?
Yay.
Ms. Sharon Williams, you've seconded, so you're good to go. Mr. Sean Billingsley?
Yay.
Mr. Tory Tucker?
Yay.
Thank you. Ms. Atwaters?
Yes, Allison, I'll just be listening in as opposed to voting.
Okay, thank you for letting me know.
Mhm.
Oh, let me see, I'm sorry. We have Jerry Basin. Was he, are we on the call? I don't remember present from them. Okay, Lily,
Yay.
thank you. Ann Phillips,
Yay.
Shirley Nichols,
Yay.
okay, Miss Ophelia Lee,
Yay.
Miss Jacqueline Rainey,
Yay.
Deputy Chief Sherbaum.
Yay.
Did Macklemore join us? We're still in no there.
No.
Okay. Ms. Joyce Shepherd is not on board. Let's see. Mr. Johnson
Yay.
and Mr. Fears. Okay. Thank you all for the vote. Our next item up is the approval of our minutes. I hope everyone took an opportunity to review them. Accordingly, I will move to approve the minutes from our last meeting on October the 12th. May I get a second?
I second.
Thank you, Pat. Nicole?
Yes, approve the minutes.
Thank you. Sharon Williams?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Tori Tucker?
Yay.
All right. Lily Poinitz? I hope I did that right.
I guess I'll abstain because I wasn't here last. This is my first meeting, so.
Okay. Fair enough. Ann Phillips?
Yay.
Shirley Nichols?
Yay.
Ophelia Lee?
Yay.
Jacqueline Rainey,
Uh,
I'm sorry, we can't hear you. You're on mute.
should I just abstain?
You've gone back on mute again.
Should I just abstain since I wasn't in the meeting?
Fair, that would be appropriate.
Mhm.
Deputy Chief Sherburne,
Okay.
and I think that is everybody who's present. Thank you all.
Justin Johnson would be the last one on that vote.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Justin. I completely skipped you.
That's
My
okay.
apologies.
I know it's on purpose. It's okay. Yay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Hey, Allison. I was here last time and I'm supposed to be on the committee, so I don't know if I've been dropped or what's.
I don't believe you've been dropped from the committee. As I show it, I have you and Nicole serving both in representation of Starlight Heights with a singular vote.
Okay.
And so as we were moving through the proceedings, as I identify Nicole with her being present, we default to Nicole, but of course, if in her absence, I would of course move to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Fair enough.
All right, good deal. All right, for our next order of business, it will be our election of officers. And to ensure that we record and document the voting of the committee members appropriately, I want to take a second vote on the chair position that we voted on last week, or I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago. And from there, I would like to take nominations for a co-chair as well as secretary. I believe we've got an unmuted party there. If you could mute yourself when not speaking, that would be really greatly appreciated. With that, I would like to open the nominations for chair.
I would like to nominate Allison Clark to become the chair of the Community Stakeholder Advisory Committee. Can I get a second?
This is Sharon, I second.
Okay.
Do we have any additional nominees for the record? Okay. With that, I would like to get a motion to elect Ms. Pat, since you raised the motion for nominee, would you like to move forward with a motion to elect, and we can get a second on that as well?
I would like to move forward with a motion to elect a co-chair.
I'm sorry, with the motion to elect a chair initially. We've got the nomination recorded currently, and we need to record the motion to elect.
I would like to move forward to elect the chair of the Community Stakeholder Advisory Committee.
Okay, with that remaining as Allison Clark?
Yes.
Okay. So the motion by Ms. Pat Colt is to elect Allison Clark for the chair of the Community Advisory Stakeholder Committee. May I get a second?
I will second the motion.
All right, let's open the vote. We will take another roll call vote for the record. Nicole Morato, you seconded. Ms. Pat Colt, you motioned. Ms. Sharon Williams.
Aye.
Mr. Tory Tucker.
Aye.
Ms. Lily Poinitz.
Aye.
Ms. Ann Phillips. Oh, I believe you're still muted, Ann.
Aye. I'm sorry.
No worries. Ms. Shirley Nichols.
Aye.
Ms. Ophelia Lee.
Aye.
Ms. Jacqueline Rainey.
Aye.
Deputy Chief Sherburne.
Aye.
And this time I remembered Mr. Jetson Johnson.
Aye.
Wonderful. With that, we have a vote for Allison Clark as chair, duly elected. I would like to open the nominations for co-chair. Do I have any nominations? If not, I would like to make a nomination of my own. Okay, I would like to nominate Ms. Sharon Williams. Can I get a second?
A second.
We wanted to nominate Lily also.
Okay, let me add Sharon Williams, and we have a second from Pat. And then Lily Pointes. I'm gonna get it right, I promise you.
Okay, I reply to any forms.
Fair enough. Can I get a second?
Second, Ophelia.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I would like to propose a motion to elect either Sharon Williams or you know what, let me excuse myself for just a moment. Are there any additional nominees? Okay, fair enough. I would like to make a motion that we move forward with a vote on either Sharon Williams or Lily Point for the seat of co-chair. We're going to do a roll call vote. If you could just indicate your decision. Let me start. Allison Clark. I'm voting in favor of Ms. Sharon Williams. Nicole Morato.
I will do Lily Ponitz.
All right, Ms. Patricia Cole.
Sharon Williams.
Okay. And Sharon, Sharon Williams, would you or Sean Billingsley care to cast your vote on the part of East Sidewalk?
I yield to Sean.
Sharon.
Mr. Tory Tucker?
Sharon Williams.
All right. Miss Lily Points?
I'll vote for myself.
Ms. Ann Phillips? Ann, are you there? Okay, Miss Shirley Nichols?
Sharon Williams.
Miss Ophelia Lee?
Lily.
Mrs. Jacqueline Rainey?
Sharon Williams.
Deputy Chief Sherbaum?
Sharon Williams.
And Mr. Justin Johnson?
Lily.
All right.
Allison, excuse me. The only vote I did not get was the vote by Ann.
I didn't get a response.
Okay.
Ann, are you there?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry. I'm just getting out of the car.
Oh, no worries.
I did not hear that, so I'm going to abstain.
Okay, thank you very much.
And can we also just make sure we have Ophelia's correct?
Correct. Miss Ophelia Lee, which way did you vote?
Lily.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Freeman, are you able to give me a tally of the vote?
1 second, please.
Sure, no rush.
There's 7 votes for Sharon and 4 votes for Lily.
Okay.
And 1 abstain.
Okay, in that instance, we do not have enough for a majority to move forward. So we will either need to revisit this at our next meeting or, well, yeah, I guess we can table this until our next meeting and see if we can move forward with the co-chair position. With that, I'm going to move forward with our nominations for secretary. Are there any people that would like to nominate or be nominated?
Well, I would nominate Nicole. She may not want to, but I nominate Nicole.
Okay. Nicole Morato.
I'm unable to serve, sorry,
No problem.
but I appreciate it.
Well, I know you will do a good job. That's all. Okay.
You would have had a second, Nicole. All right, do we have any other nominees for secretary? Okay, it looks like we will be tabling that until our next meeting as well. Thank you all. With that, the voting is closed. For our next order of business, excuse me, give me just a second here. For our next order of business, we would like to move forward into the development process and timeline overview for the project. Mr. Bob Hughes, are you on the line?
I am on the line, yes.
Okay, wonderful. Well, then I will let you take it from here with your presentation.
Okay, great. I'm going to be the driver, but I think some other folks are going to start out here. So let me get it pulled up.
While he's pulling that up, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is John Goff, and I'm serving along with David Scott. We're the project managers for the project, working with the Atlanta Police Foundation. And Bob, why don't we just go to the process slide?
Sure.
So this very complicated side, I'm not going to read it to everybody, but we thought it would be helpful based on questions that we had last time of what is the exact process of what we're doing. And what we follow at Da Vinci, and in most of the projects, we do very complex projects all over the Southeast, is a 4 or 5 step process that's disciplined that we go through. And the first step is due diligence and master planning. It's basically where we put everything together. We define the program. We define what the it is, if you will. We establish initial budgets, initial schedules. We begin the phase 1 environmental analysis. We do surveys. We really study the site very, very carefully to get information for site analysis, which you'll see later today. So in the first step, you're getting the information, and then the second step, or the second tranche of work, is we get that done. So what comes out of that first step, the first box, essentially is determine that the proposed improvements fit on the site. And in this case, we're working to the 85 acres that was established by the city council. And the location of that. We identify any and all environmental conditions, and there's a number of those that we study and we'll go through today as they impact the development, because we want to minimize those impacts as much as possible. We confirm again the budget, and we come up with the first concept plan, which you've seen previously. We're currently in the red box, which is the second one, where now we go through and we dive deeper. We get much more technical into it. We probably have about 30 people working on the team now: engineers, scientists, architects, surveyors, landscape architects, really validating the plan and what it is and making adjustments based on the information we got from the first phase. We're about halfway through that process right now. I'm going to share that with you today. And then subsequently after that, we go through, we again test budget, we test all the different things. We're always doing these tests. And in this case, working with the advisory committee, the Police Foundation, the city, all the government authorities. DeKalb County has a role in this project, as you know. And then only then we move forward into the active design phase, which those of you that may be familiar, there's 4 distinct phases of a design process. There's concept design, there's schematic design, which basically is all the buildings have like a single line drawing that's done. There's design development, which is we get much more into the detail of how the buildings and the site features are going to be done. The construction documents, that's what's actually used by the builders to build the project. And then finally, construction administration, which is in column number 4, which really is the construction process itself, which is also a very disciplined process. And then lastly, once all that's done, we go through the open, operate, and train to make sure the facility suits its needs for the foundation, and more importantly, for the police and the fire officials seeking the training. So Marshall, I don't know if you'll share this with the committee. It's an interesting chart. Like I said, I don't want to read it to you. But if there are any questions related to the process, as you can see, we're in the early stage. So that's perfect timing for having meetings like this.
So if I'm reading this correctly with the key, you were saying you just finished the wetlands analysis. That's where we're at inside number 2.
Yeah, we've done all of that. These aren't necessarily in order. We did some of the wetland analysis actually came in step 1. This is where we now have taken the data that we, in step 1, we got the data. Now we've taken that information and applied it to the plan itself. And Bob's going to walk you through kind of how each of these impact morphing the plan.
Yeah, I think that's it's a great overview. And, when we were together last time, I know not everybody was there, but there was a question about just where are we in the process? And what we wanted to share with everybody was sort of the overall look of the process, kind of where we are at this, what comes next, et cetera. And as we go, each time we meet, we'll pull this up and talk about kind of where we've been, what we've learned, input we've gotten, how that's been digested, and move forward. We're inviting you guys to watch us make the sausage, so to speak. It is an iterative process by which every time you draw one, you get feedback, and from that you learn and you refine and move it through. So we hope to kind of bring y'all through that in a way that, this is, secondhand to us, but it sounds like Greek to people who haven't necessarily been through it.
And Bob, this is Sharon. This is really clear in terms of developing the site per se, or the site proper. But one of the deliverables the community was interested in were the security cameras in our communities or in our developments. Where would that fall in your development process?
Marshall, I'm going to kind of kick that back to you guys, because that is a little bit outside of what us as the design consultants are doing here. I think that's running on more of, we would call that more of a parallel path, and I'm not sure what the timeline of that would be.
Yeah,
Marshall.
thanks, Bob. So that's actually one that, again, to Bob's point, that doesn't fall within the scope of their work. The Police Foundation obviously have worked on the technology programs within this area for quite a while. And so as we talked about in reference in our last call, once we took kind of all the items that were areas of concern and focus for the stakeholder group, we divided those into the 3 times in which we would address them. And so at our next meeting, the meeting to follow this one is the one where we discuss security planning. And basically what that entails is, again, the team going out to each of the communities prior to that meeting and developing and presenting to this committee what the security planning would look like for the area and for the HOAs and communities that are immediately around the site.
Okay, thank you. I mean, so this is pretty clear, pretty standard development process for the site proper. So that makes perfect sense. Thanks.
Also, I'd like to input, at what point do we as the community representatives have input, or do we get input, or there are certain things that we would like to see happen as far as the development goes. Are we gonna have any kind of impact on how this site gets developed?
Well, I think the beginning of that question is, I think that you already have. You've given us a list of concerns, be it noise, be it views from Key Road, be it sensitivity to certain aspects of the land and the site. And what we hope to do tonight is begin to show you how we're processing what we've heard to date and get your feedback on, are we listening good? Are we interpreting the concerns properly? And are the solutions that we're coming up with, the directions we're headed, valid towards those? Again, as I said earlier, it's an iterative process. So you may discover tonight that we are addressing certain things, but they may bring to mind another thing that you would like to bring up to us. And so, you know, we tell clients a lot of times, you know, our job is to take your wish list and get it all done, right? Yeah, it's sometimes we don't get it all done, but you know, if we don't get all the wish list and everything on the table, we know we won't get it done. So we hope to open up into what I would call much more of a dialogue than just a presentation and reaction, so that we make sure that we're listening, we're reacting. If we hit something that's a conflict, we're both, you know, dialoguing around it, you know, in an open and honest way.
Yeah, I think that that's fair. But I think maybe the core of the concern from the community is that will we ever have a point to say, take a vote on whether the plan that has been developed by you all actually matches what we asked for? Because there's a little bit of value calculation that, Bob, your team gets to make when you say, well, we took these notes, we took this feedback, and then we gave them this. Well, do we ever get a say to say, no, what you gave us actually did not match what we discussed? And that's what we're asking from this standpoint.
Yeah, if we're off base, again, Lily, if we're off base in what we've heard to date, we're interpreting it wrong, we want to hear that this evening. We want to hear that along the way. We don't want to get to the end, and if we get to the end and we have a vote and that vote is, you know, in doubt, then I don't know that we've done a real good job of this process.
Right. But I think we need both. I think we need both the process that we're talking about and the accountability vote at the end, or somewhere in this process, you know, before we move from stage gate 1 to stage gate 2 to stage gate 3, we need opportunities to say, hold up, you know, the last bit of this process did not go the way that we thought it would.
Okay.
And so that's maybe a question for the governing of this committee more than, you know, this exact development plan.
Yeah, I think you're probably right there, but I would sort of say, let's go through this evening and see where, you know, this is the first time we've kind of all been together. It's the first time we've had a chance to process some of this stuff. So let's see where we are and kind of, you know, that hopefully will tell us a lot.
I have a question. Of
Sure.
course, under concepts 2, the tree survey. One of the big issues with this development was that people were concerned that a number of the trees would have to be removed. These studies that have already taken place, are they online or someplace where we can review them so that we can better understand what has been done and know exactly what's going to have to be done at some point? Are they being posted online in any form, or can we see them?
I think everything that we have, we're probably willing to share. They're not posted online right now, but let's, again, Ms. Phillips, I think if we go through this evening, you'll see how we've used information to build a knowledge base to make decisions from. And that information is valid information. So we have no reason not to share valid information with anybody.
I'd like to just leverage on that for Ms. Phillips, that all of this information is also typically submitted through the permitting and approval process on any development. So the tree survey, the wetlands analysis, all of these things are submitted to the public record. It's for the permitting process, but it's a public record.
I'll look it up. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
You know,
just to also add on that as well, we will be again coming up with that process for how documents are also shared. And so as we move forward, we are again figuring out whether it will be on the Atlanta Police Foundation's website or whether we will go back to this training center website that we have created for all of the information for the training center. But we would look to obviously post things there for the public to also gain access to.
Perfect. I would also like to see, by the way, this is Allison Clark speaking. I would like to see a scenario where the members of this committee can directly receive that information for consideration ahead of the meeting, so that as we jump into the meeting, we are jumping into it with the knowledge of what exactly we are truly considering. Is that something we can facilitate?
Yep, I believe that is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be really helpful. Thank you, Allison.
Were there any additional comments or questions for Mr. Hughes or Mr. Goff?
We do have more information to share tonight as we move forward.
Definitely. Let's move forward. And
So
if you all will, can we hold all the questions until they complete the presentation?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we really want to walk through three things here that said, as John had said earlier, when we went through an original master planning effort here, we were basing that on GIS, topographic information, aerial photography information, etc. As we've gotten better information, we've been able to drill down and do much better analysis around our site. And there's a word we're going to use a lot, and that's environmental issues. And there are really two pieces to that, if we want to think about it. One is environmental. Is there any contamination in the ground, in the land, that needs to be remediated? That is referred to environmentally. And then there's also streams and trees and topography and all those things that create an environment. And we want to be able to, address both of those. So you'll hear us use the word of environmental concerns, constraints, opportunities to mean both of those, and we'll put all of that together. And then we'll see how that information has begun to shape the plan. Oops. Back 1, 2. So this was the original master plan that probably everybody has seen. What's really, I think, key to this, if we were to look at this, I'm going to call it just purely diagrammatic. This was set up to have a very public side to it, the east side that would relate to a park on the east side. It had campus buildings, training buildings, and then the things that we would consider potentially dangerous were tucked over here into this corner with buffers around the edges of it, so that we really weren't inviting people to come there. But if somebody wanted to walk through the campus, they could walk through the campus. So forget shapes of buildings, forget anything here, and just think about this as moving from a very public area to a very private area as part of the diagram of the master plan. You can see the ponds, the shaping of the stream that runs through here, Entrenchment Creek, the floodplain associated with that. So while this plan took into account some of those major features, it didn't have the exact information that you're going to see as we move forward in this. So if I do move forward, what you're going to see is a series of analyses that we do based on the topographic, hydrologic, and vegetative information that we have now obtained from the site. The first thing we look at is what we call relative topographic change. That's the fall across the site. And if you've been there, key roads up high, the land falls down to floodplain, which is the darker kind of brownish red color to the east. This would all be floodplain down in here in the lowest elevations of the site. So this begins again to tell you where you might shape building things and where you might not. And from how we look at it. The second thing we look at is the steepness of the slope. Steeper slopes are more vulnerable to erosion and often carry larger and better trees on them, and if land's been left long enough for that to count. So the darker areas you see here are steeper slopes. The lighter areas, albeit the floodplain here, areas in here, and you see the lighter in here, all of this is less steep. And so that would tend to guide you to developing there. You're moving less earthwork, less dirt, less impacts on the land. Some of these steeper areas in here really if they started to be graded, could begin to start to have a negative effect on the streams that run down here. So this is all information that we look at and starting to pull together from this. The next thing we look at is the hydrology. Floodplain all the way to the east. We have streams coming up with 3 ponds that exist in this area. And then what you see in the gray to the either side of this is the 75-foot stream buffers that are legislated in place along the streams. And that really encompasses the 75-foot DeKalb County stream buffer, and captured inside that, sort of pancaked on top of it, if you would, is the state's 25-foot stream buffer for the streams. I'll repeat myself there. The next thing we look at is the vegetation that exists on the site. We've had an arborist out on the site, and they have geolocated all specimen trees that are on the site. And then we have located what we call the more mature growth trees. You know, the history of this site was that it was the prison farm. And if you go back, everybody has this on their Google Earth, but you can go backwards on Google Earth, and you can go back to 20 years ago and see the vast majority of this site cleared. So really what's in the what we call early succession trees, the lighter green trees areas in here, a lot of that, there's pine trees, there's actually some invasive species, a lot of Bradford pear escaped and are populated in the area. Tree called Tree of Heaven, there's kudzu, there's lots of things that you would expect to find in an urban area and an early succession stage, a lot of which are not natural or native species. As we move down, an area that's always of particular concern to us is whatever is in that riparian zone, riparian being the floodplain that associated with a major stream. So we pull that vegetation out separately. Now, in this case, that vegetation contains a lot of, again, invasive species, as a lot of our floodplains do in urban areas. So, you know, if this were to move to be a park, I would hope that those invasive species were removed and native species were replaced into it. We get a lot more ecological benefit out of it under that scenario. Then the last thing that we have here is we have completed the process of completing the cultural resources report for the property. And so we have shaded in here the footprints of the buildings that could possibly be preserved, renovated, restored in some capacity on the site. These are the buildings that would have the most cultural or historical relevance associated to the prison farm. So we take all of this information and we pull it together into this. It's called a composite analysis overlay. And so what you see is every time you have a layer of a darker color laid on top of a darker color, it gets darker. So steeper slopes with big trees inside of a floodplain or a stream buffer, they get darker. The lighter areas come out, and this begins to tell you we don't want to be building anything inside of the darker areas here if we can help it. We want to look at how we work around the cultural resource aspects of this. We want to stay off of the steeper slopes, and we want to concentrate our development into these zones that are those lighter and medium gray tones. And so this really is a lot of just visualization of what we do as a natural process, but it helps everybody sort of understand, okay, I get it. You know, if there's big trees associated with a stream and floodplain and steep slopes, we want to stay away from that from an environmental perspective, using that word environmental a different way as we move forward. So we took this and we took the original plan. I jumped one too fast. Here we go. We took the original plan that you saw that I first went over, which was the master plan. And we took the line work of that in red and we just laid it over the top of all of this information. And you can see, based on where we were at the time, we're running roads up through steep topography. we're going over the top of what could be cultural resources. We're grading into areas we should stay out of. So we take this with the additional information and we say, how can we adjust that? And this is how we can begin to adjust it so that we're staying away from anything that's steep slopes. We're staying away from anything that has the potential to be a cultural resource, that we're pulling off of these steep slopes and staying out of our stream buffers and riparian areas. So this becomes a way of taking that original diagram. We still have a very potentially public edge, something that could be a great park facility over here. We move back through a campus environment, and then we still congregate the things over here that we would want to be safe for people in the area. The other thing that we've done here is that, y'all, one of the things that y'all said is, what's this going to look like from Key Road? And we said, all right, now that we have good information, we have gone along the edge of Key Road here and said, let's create a 100-foot deep undisturbed buffer, unless we're cleaning something out that might be an invasive species or something, but preserve all of those trees for 100 feet off of Key Road. So what you might see from Key Road then is trees like you see it today. You'll see a study in a minute. We've actually begun to look at the grading for all of this, so that even this part here, we would cut down a little bit so that that tree buffer, that 100-foot swath, now becomes also land, and we're depressing things on the other side of it so that visually they're more shielded from Key Road and any of the neighborhoods in the area here. There was also a request of, could we begin to provide some parking here? There's a nice little flat area right here off of Key Road that we could tuck in about 20 parking spaces. And the idea is this, all of this through here, you'll see in a second, could start to become parkland. And so somebody could park here, you could walk through down in Trenchment Creek, back around, back up. So we're thinking about, again, embedding this inside of green space and park space as we move forward. So if I click forward to that, oops, this thing is, it's a hair trigger on it, I guess. So you can see we have the campus tucked in here. We've pulled the pasture land back. All the buildings that have the potential of being cultural resources, we're holding and staying away from it, waiting further analysis. Horse barn might tuck up into here, campus here, road comes in back around to all of these facilities, the 100-foot buffer, and then all of this land through here really becomes preserved green space that is, if we click forward now, outside of the 85 acres that would be within the lease line and contain all the improvements. So this literally has the ability now to be park space running down through the middle of campus, the 100-foot buffer around the edge, looping around, and then all of the area to the east, again, preserved for the idea that it potentially could be parkland. Finally, as I mentioned, this is, if you do grading plans for a living, you'll understand this, but this is contours showing proposed contours relative to existing contours. We're not out here, and you can see all this terraces down the hill. We're not out here to pancake this land and make it flat like a big industrial park. The good thing about a lot of these training routes and stuff, they can have slopes on them, and we've built that into it. The other thing that we want to make sure that we do, just from a responsibility standpoint, when you're developing a site like this, the amount of land you cut from one area and fill in another should balance itself. That way you're not hauling dirt off or hauling dirt on. But we also want to minimize the amount of dirt that we move, because that's better to do it. So we would look at this to achieve both aspects of that. So I guess I can pause there and really back up and ask, has anybody got any questions around this? Our thought process, things we're thinking about, not thinking about, wide open for your thoughts.
I do have a question. This is Allison Clark speaking. I do have a question about the Key Road view that you mentioned, the 100-foot buffer. One
Yes.
of the reasons this was initially brought up was the concern is that the current aesthetic is not very pleasing to those of us having to drive through the area. And so seeing more of the same is not really what we are looking to see, especially with development coming to the area. So I'm curious to know whether or not there's any plan change to the tree line, even if you keep a portion of that existing foliage, what could that potentially look like that looks more beautiful than it does currently?
Hopefully better than this, right?
Yes, yes, that's a problem for us.
Yeah, let me say we have,
Other than the disrepair of the fence, we would disagree with that. We love the trees and all the greenery.
Well,
And
one of the things, Bob,
feels
you may
very
want to talk
natural.
about by looking at this picture is the significant amount of invasive species. So there may be a lot of green, but it's a ton of invasive species. So I think we'd want to work together to eliminate the invasive species and let more natural biodiversity grow along in that 100-foot, and obviously get rid of the ratty fence.
Yeah.
Are you planning to install more native species then?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I think
Also-
we would essentially look at this and say, you know, we would virtually do a 100% native plant species approach here. We've done that on several projects. Our firm was fortunate enough to just recently do the West Side Park for the city of Atlanta, and that's fully based on environmental restoration and native species there. So I think we would absolutely do that on the campus here. The other thing is this fence shouldn't belong right on this edge. This fence should move back to the back side of this buffer, right? And this land really becomes community land, not, you know, not campus land here.
Bob,
That's good. Also, if you guys could identify yourself when you speak.
all right, this is Ann Phillips. That street, Key Road, is extremely narrow. Does the plan include widening the street and making the curbs and the edges a lot safer? Because right now, if a truck is coming at you in the opposite direction, you are bound to pull over to the side, and it's very narrow there.
Right.
So,
I think well, you can kind of see the red line of it here. One of the things that we're just showing is across the frontage from Key Road here, about to add a sidewalk along at least that stretch of it. And so hopefully that sidewalk, you know, again, as this extends on, this is sort of like in a lot of places in our city where we need to enhance walkability, but we can at least get a piece of that in. It could get you from the neighborhood here into the park safely.
Yeah. That was my question. Pat Colt, is that seeing sidewalks added to that area as well, if possible? Safety of residents.
this is Ann Phillips. I have a question about the safety of the officers and the fire department that's actually training on the site. You indicated that, of course, the ponds are there and people would be able to walk through, and you're going to maintain the tree line. But it seems like it's going to be a little bit more open, I guess, than what I thought it would be, and that there would be buffers of protection for the police officers and the fire personnel. But it sounds like people will be able to walk from here and over on the park side on the east side.
Yes.
Correct?
So, yes. So, you know, you can kind of see what is an indication of fence here. This whole area would be fenced and secure, you know, for the protection of anybody in here training, but also for the protection of somebody, a kid who gets out here and decides to wander into the middle of a facility like this. We don't want that to happen either. Conversely to that, we've always from the beginning thought that this notion that the police and the community and the fire department and everybody are sort of intertwined in this physical world is symbolic of putting that back together, putting our police, our you know, people who, you know, serve us in a way, and the community together. So if the police are out here jogging and walking or whatever, and somebody's walking, you say hello to each other. that there's a different, sort of thing. So that if we cut off everything back here in the back and said, oh, this is a campus. And I know lots of people that live near college campuses or nice camp, and they go walk the campuses, and that they're welcome to do that. So the idea that somebody could walk along here, see horses, walk along the park, walk along a future bigger park, all of that is held as a part of what we've thought from day one.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
Sharon. I like the integration of the community and the academy. It's nice. I also appreciate the sidewalks. I think what you're going to hear from the community is more. So more sidewalks. And I think we keep hearing over and over again the importance of widening Key Road. And this is just for the vehicles, because we're imagining there's going to be increased traffic as a result of the academy. And the current road cannot fully handle the existing capacity. So your thoughts on that?
I think we need to look further at that.
Yeah, that was a big reason why we were suggesting to have the entrance over on Constitution away from the residential areas, because I'm sorry, this is Amy Taylor. As it's already been brought to our attention, that road is not only just really thin, but it's, really in disrepair. So, I had, I guess, been told that idea to move entrances to Constitution was kicked out.
Or that there was going to be an entrance on Constitution, and because we were saying, if it's like public on Key, that seems kind of reasonable, but the main programmatic activity entrance on Constitution is kind of.
Also, we don't see where the helicopter pad is being put.
Just a quick interjection. This is Allison Clark. I show that on our upcoming meeting, we will cover the Key Road pedestrian and vehicular traffic piece. And so I'm not sure that we're best equipped to address all of that this evening. However, I do understand you have a question about the helipad, which would be appropriate to address in this context.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so I think the area D here is part of a sort of drill field kind of quad area, and it's being set up so that helicopters could be brought in here. Helicopters could also be brought into what is in here, which is it's a large pad for particularly people learning to drive trucks, fire trucks, et cetera, to back up, turn them, et cetera, sort of a skills pad area. So, those would be the kinds of places that we would be bringing helicopter into. We don't have a designated helipad. It's not like there's constant, movement of helicopters in and out. It's more for emergency. I live next to Piedmont Hospital, and we have helicopters come into the hospital, maybe one a week or something. And so, I don't think we have that much helicopter here. I'm just saying it's not that kind of, it's not like 5 flights a day kind of helicopter world.
Thank you, Bob.
Can I switch gears a little bit? I just have 2 questions. If we could go back to the building slide with the historical and cultural significant buildings on it.
So here, they're showing up here.
Yeah, okay. So how did y'all determine the cultural and social significance of those buildings? Because that seems like something that this committee really should have some input on.
Well, hey, this is Alan Williams. I'm project manager with the Atlanta Police Foundation. And I'm going to talk about that in just a few minutes, but I can answer your question now. We're still in the draft form right now. And let's why don't we do this? Why don't we just wait and then go to my slide on the cultural? That way I can kind of combine everything together without kind of a shotgun approach. That's okay.
Yeah, that's great with me. And then my last question, and we probably might get to this with the environmental discussion, is just Is there a figure anywhere in this presentation that overlays what the phase 1 environmental site assessment area coverage was on top of this site plan?
Pardon me again, this is Allison Clark. We will be getting into the site due diligence studies as the next phase of this meeting. And so right now we want to concentrate all questions to this site plan review and the developmental process so that we can move forward. Does anyone have any questions for either Bob Hughes or John Goff before we move forward into the site due diligence studies?
Yes, Allison, Tori Tucker. I just had a question about the location of the site now. What will happen to that site? Because we're only like 600 feet or less from that site. Is there some plan for that site, or what is the plan for that old location once this is on?
That would be a question for the city of Atlanta that I'm not sure if Justin is prepared to answer that question or not, or can speak to it, but ultimately it would be the city of Atlanta's decision.
Thank you.
What I can say to it, Tori, is that we have obviously talked about moving what is there, again, the firing range and things that's currently there over to this area completely. So there wouldn't be like a dual usage from what we have discussed already.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I might point out here, because I didn't do that earlier. Right in here is where that firing range is looking to land right now. And there'll be some conversation around that and future studies to determine if that is the proper location later in the presentation as well. But I just wanted to point that out now for the site standpoint. It'll be relevant as we get on into the presentation.
And one more thing, this is Lily, sorry. I wanted to just clarify for folks on the phone who maybe are not as familiar with the arborist terms. So when we were on that vegetation slide, when we're talking about early succession trees, what that means is that succession means those trees, if they were to live their full life, die, and then new trees would be born there. The next group of trees to be born would be the mature hardwood trees. So just for an understanding of what that differentiation is between mature growth and early succession, if you actually let the early succession live out their life, that land turns into mature growth land. Just kind of to break down some of this technical speak for everybody.
Thank you for that, Lily. Are there any additional questions, as we're running a little short on time, so I want us to move forward into the site due diligence study if possible.
Okay, Bob, you can go to the next slide if you want to. I'll try to be brief. I'm Alan Williams, project manager with Atlanta Police Foundation. I'm going to talk about 4 items that we're currently in progress right now in the process. It's the phase 1 environmental assessment, the phase 2 investigation, the cultural resource survey, and then the preservation study, and they all kind of work together. The phase 1 has been done, and it was done back in April, then it got revised again in September to try to match up with our current 85-acre lease. And I don't know if anybody's real familiar with the phase 1, but what it basically does, it's got an ASTM standard that it follows closely. It'll go through all the historical information, look at records reviews and interviews people that are familiar with the site, and then they'll go look at physically on the site and do a review. And then they come back with the conclusions. And in this case, they came back with, it looks like there was probably 6 kind of basic areas of concern. They call them RECs, recognized environmental concern. And if you guys are, some of you guys are more familiar with the site than others, but if you're going down Key Road and that first entrance on the right, there's 3 buildings. There's a building that's got a rock wall structure. There's a building right beside it that's got a CMU wall. And back behind it to the east is a maintenance shed. It looks like it has 3 bays. So the first building, and by the way, what we have done, we started that phase 2 process right now. Phase 1 is done. The environmental study is done, complete. And we've hired Terracon consultants to do the phase 1 and the phase 2. And so we're in the phase 2 portion right now. So we're taking those RECs, recognized environmental concerns, and going to address them. A couple of weeks ago, we had a track code and a skid steer, like a Bobcat out there. And what we were doing was trying to get all the vegetation off the three structures there at the first entrance, and then getting all the, if you've been over there where it's all grown up inside those buildings and everything, trying to get everything out of there so we can assess what's there. We also went over to the prison building, even though that's not in our lease, and we got all the vegetation off two sides over there. And it's a pretty interesting note. I was over there looking, and I had a big piece of equipment, and I said, man, look at all these tires down in the boiler room and also down that ravine. I said, why don't we just go down there and get them out, not knowing what we were getting into. But so about 2 days later, we pulled out thousands of tires and set them up on that deck up there. So we got to figure out how to get rid of them. One idea we have, we got to work with the city on is, I don't know if everybody's familiar with Liberty Tire. They're a big recycler off Ellsworth Industrial. And those tires get recycled and get put back for alternative fuel, ground cover, and also sports fuels. But that's completely separate than what we're doing. I think. So if you're ever over there and you see the big piles of tires, that's what we did, and just kind of trying to be good stewards of the property there. Anyway, there are 6 areas of concern that we're addressing. 3 of those buildings right there on that front entrance, and throughout the site, there's been tires and just dump debris and all illegally dumped. We have a concern for groundwater, so we're doing groundwater monitoring. And then back behind those 3 buildings at the first entrance, there's a 20,000 gallon tank that's kind of, everybody's saying it's got a hole cut in it. It's great. It's actually going to probably show up on the cultural resource study also. So it's kind of in 2 different areas. So that phase 2 study will have, let's see, we got all the unlabeled cans in there, the stained concrete. There was a maintenance shed there. There was a fueling station there. So go to the next slide, Bob, if you don't mind. So we got the off-site issues. We're a little concerned about groundwater, so we're going to have groundwater monitoring stations there. I think we have 6 of those. That 20,000 gallon tank that's down there back behind those buildings, it's wedged in those trees there. And then that closed recognized environmental condition. That's something that the city had done years ago, probably in 2005. That second building, which is kind of a fueling area, there were some underground storage tanks that got remediated. There's paperwork on that through the EDA, the Department of the State. Next slide, Bob. So this is what we're currently going to do. We're going to have 16 borings for soil, 6 for groundwater, and we'll test them. Then we'll get the final report. We've actually don't need 6 groundwater monitoring wells, but we usually end up dry on a couple of them. So we went ahead and tried to get a couple more. Those samples will be taken, handled carefully, sent to the lab, and those results will come back. And depending on the level of, there's VOCs, SVOCs, there's 8 different metals plus zinc we got to analyze. And once those come back, we'll analyze it and we'll put together, if we need to, a remediation plan, be full transparent, and try to see what we have to do. So that
Alan, sorry to interrupt. You want to mention that almost all of those are just right adjacent to where the existing buildings were or are?
Correct. When you're driving, like I said, when you're driving that key road, those first 3 buildings, that's where all the concerns were. And then kind of down along the power line easement on the west side, about 2/3 of the way down, where there's some dumping goes down, and they were thinking maybe the farming and the pesticides. There's 3 borings down through there. So I think we've got it covered between the phase 1 and the phase 2. So we'll see what comes back. The third area is the cultural resource review, which is also done by Terracon, because it all kind of works together. Their historical investigation on phase 1 worked great with the cultural resource review. That is in progress right now. That's a combined of, Bob, next slide, please. That what they do is a historical review, as much history as you can find, and they go back and look at all their phase 1 aerial maps. They also go on site and they do a grid search. They go 90-meter grid, take soil samples, run them through a sieve, and see if there's any kind of archaeological items we need to be concerned with. Then they identify any buildings. I guess they're saying anything 50 years or older. So Bob, you and I are probably a cultural resource, it sounds like. And then they'll do a report. And what's great about these 4 items, they all kind of work together. Phase 1 and phase 2 work together. Then the cultural resource works closely with the preservation. And Lily, you talked about those buildings, and I've spent a lot of time out there, and we've engaged the Atlanta Preservation Center, David Mitchell, to work closely with our cultural resource report. We walked all over the site, and we have buildings, and we also have other elements throughout the site that can be considered a cultural resource and we need to preserve. For instance, all those stone elements from the Homer and Poe and the Virgil and they're out there, they're going to be on the record. The big 20,000 gallon tank will be on the cultural resource record. So we're trying to capture everything that we can, and then the team's going to take a look, go back and look at it, and as they're doing the master plan, try to see if there's adaptive reuse or save, or see if we can build around it. And so that's the 4 items I've been working on. So they're all in progress, and all this needs to be done before we actually start construction.
And Alan, I think it's important to point out, because I know last time there was some express about concern of making sure if there's an environmental issue that needs to be cleaned up, that it's addressed, that this environmental study is not just inside the 85 acres that are the Police Foundation lease land, but we're looking at everything outside of that, so that, if there's something there, we want to know it. And I think y'all want to know it. We all want to know that it gets cleaned up.
So that's just where I actually don't think what you're saying is true. And I would like to see on a map exactly what areas you are defining in your environmental site assessment and what areas are in the plan for the site plan.
Well, Lily, our phase 1 is in the public right now.
Yeah, I know. I read it. So what I'm saying is, like, there are areas in the site that you guys left out investigating. And I understand APF told you to do that, or City of Atlanta told you to do that. They're your client. But what I'm trying to advocate for is a full assessment of the whole property to actually understand the contamination that has been put on the site by City of Atlanta, so that when you open up park spaces that have not been remediated, we don't have citizens who are coming into contact with contaminated soil and contaminated water, like they already have been, honestly, with Entrenchment Creek. So that's just where, really, to prove what you're doing, to prove that this is due diligence in the eyes of a concerned citizen, I'm asking for maps that show what areas did you leave out of the phase 1 ESA. We need to see what areas were left out, and we need to assess if we need those areas assessed in a new phase 1 ESA.
This is Allison Clark, Chair. I just want to jump in real quick and say that if possible, I don't know, I think Lily, you're saying that you've already reviewed the environmental study. It may be helpful to have a link to that study sent out to the committee. But the one thing that I do want to make a point of mentioning here today is that our job in this process as a committee is to advise on what we think needs to happen in this development process moving forward. And so as we review these studies, or as we review the information, we want to make recommendations, but we don't want to disparage or in any way attack any of the individuals involved. So one thing that I will ask of all members here is that we focus on what it is we want to do to actually advance this. And so if there's a portion of the study that we need to see, or even if that piece exists, because I believe that's phase 1 environmental, there's still phase 2 underway. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
The phase 2 is just a further investigation of what's found in phase 1. So that's just where, I have a serious concern, and I'm an environmental engineer. That's why I'm coming with this kind of language and background.
Are you talking about the entire 380 acres that is what you would like to see assessed?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that's that's a fair request, Lily. And so I kind of go back. Yeah. Let's work together on this. But, if that's a request, I think that's a fair request to come out. We're trying to sort of stay in here as we're moving this around. I think it is true that we have looked at areas like the larger building area that we've said is sort of set up for preservation. We're not building there. We do have wells going in there. So, that maybe both are true. Maybe you want a larger area done, and we've done outside of ours. And so let's put that out there for consideration by the city.
Yeah, I think Lily's got a really good point, and maybe we don't do it all at once, but we could do this in phases, because I think there's the immediate area that needs to be, I imagine there's going to need to be some remediation. I'm not psychic, but I can just, I've seen the things that were dumped there, right?
Right.
So that's that immediate area. Let's get up and going with the academy. That's phase one. But then maybe a phase two, a phase three, and not just an iteration on phase one, but we could expand the geographic footprint, that clearly needs to be looked at, given the history of the site.
Yeah, I think for other uses outside of what we're doing, I would agree that
Okay.
needs to be done. So, if that's done, we just need to figure out how we do that, right?
Right.
We are, and I don't want to sound, I'm not trying to get in the way and say, no, we should, we're sort of looking at our stuff and saying, all right, we're trying to do this and do a good job. And if there's additional work that needs to be done for other reasons outside of that come out of this, let's get that in the dialogue.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're asking. And we want to be pragmatic, and we understand that, everything can be done in phases as long as we can see it documented, and we understand the time frame.
Okay.
Fair
that
enough.
Sounds great. I think that's good.
Amy Taylor, yeah, maybe some kind of amendment to the original plan, saying, okay, once phase one is done, then we'll do the rest of the property, and get that cleaned up and suitable for future use possibly, or, whatever.
Yeah, I think just kind of reiterating like the time frame, like not letting that hold us to overlook anything or let anything fall through the cracks. If we're trying to stick to like a very stringent timeline, that's not realistic, but we just want to be thorough and make sure that anything that wasn't covered in phase one, not to anybody's fault or anything, but we just want to kind of double, triple check, and just make sure that it'll be.
And maybe another way of saying it, Nicole, is that, as I'm hearing, is if we're focused on 85 acres of 300 acres, let's don't leave the other 200 and what alone. That's what y'all are asking for, right? And I think that's a request that should go out there, but we figure out how that gets done. And I'm dancing around that because I'm not sure. I'm sitting here, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not sure that's the Police Foundation's job to look at the other 200 plus acres, but the other 200 plus acres should be put at so that people in the area are confident that there's not contamination there.
Correct.
This is Allison Clark again. I just want to jump back in and say I completely agree with what Lily, with what you've put forward, Bob, you as well. I think that we just have to remember that the focus of this committee is on that 85 acres. That does not mean that there does not need to be a look at the other pieces, but our job here as this community advisory committee is to focus on that 85 acres and what we are proposing with respect to that.
I totally agree, Pat Cook.
With that, was there any more to the presentation as far as the cultural assessments and the noise analysis that we can move forward with?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's a question.
That's okay. Amy Taylor, I don't know if this is exactly appropriate at this time, but it's my understanding there are human and animal remains on the property that are of community concern. Has that been addressed or thought about in your plans?
Well, it's being addressed through the cultural resources report, and any evidence of either of those is being looked for.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was gonna say just, this is Lily, one more thing on the cultural resources survey. I guess that's just an important thing for us to get a chance to review. That's my main point. I think that there's a lot of very complex sociocultural context to be captured here that this group would be a great group to like speak to. So please give us the chance to do that before that report is kind of finalized, if we can.
We will.
Is there a date on when that's anticipated to be made
Not yet.
available to us?
We're still working on this, but it's several weeks out. But it also doesn't need to stand alone. It needs to have the preservation side kind of work with it.
I think what would be ideal at this point is for us to, once those reports are completed, for those reports to make their way out to committee so that during the meeting that follows the presentation of those reports, we have an opportunity to discuss. Is that something we can facilitate?
And just making sure that like timeline is as such that, and I know that like obviously the permitting and things like that, the timelines are intertwined, but just that there's sufficient time before anything goes to approval that we have to review and discuss.
Yeah, the environmental assessment phase 1, I've read it, Nicole's read it. We sent it on to Lily, but nobody else seems to have it. So I feel like it's definitely prudent for all of us to have the documentation before discussion.
Fair enough. Thank you all for your remarks. Mr. Williams, is there an additional portion of the presentation, or are we?
No, I think I'm done. I think one thing to note is we're doing these 4 items really, really early in the first stages of the project. So we got a lot of time to react. So it's not like we're getting ready to start construction next month. So we've got time to react and make this right.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Thank you all very, very much. The noise analysis that is listed here, we are going to move forward with that piece during our next meeting. So I would like to make a motion that we table that portion until our next meeting. Can I get a second?
A second, Pat
A
Cole.
second.
Thank you. I have a second from Pat Colt.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And we'll take a quick roll call vote if we can. Nicole Morato.
I second. I'm just curious if that means we're going to have to push something off from the next meeting though, because not knowing what the topic is after that.
Not at all. I believe they're still doing a little bit more research on that piece, so it's not prepared to present at this time. And so, yeah, there's no opportunity to move forward with it today. But in looking at what we have for the next agenda, we should be a-okay on time to make it work.
Okay, understand. Yeah, approve or yay.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. Ms. Sharon Williams.
Yay.
And Sean Billingsley.
Yay.
Mr. Tory Tucker.
Yay.
Ms. Atwaters. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Atwaters, I forgot. Ms. Lily Pointes.
Yay.
Ms. Ann Phillips.
Yay.
Ms. Shirley Nichols.
Yay.
Ms. Ophelia Lee.
Yay.
Ms. Jacqueline Rainey.
Yay.
Deputy Chief Sherbaum.
Yay.
Thank you. And I believe we now have First Deputy Chief James McLemore on the line. No? Okay. And Mr. Justin Johnson.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. With that tabled, the last piece of our agenda is to discuss our site visit. We talked about this last go around, getting us out there so that we can move forward with that. Mr. Freeman, I believe you were going to set up a doodle to the group so that we can get some times organized.
Yes, and I can send that out to the entire committee.
Okay.
Perfect. If you all would keep your eyes peeled for that and respond as soon as possible so that we can get this meeting on the books and get that site visit underway, I think that will help all of us as we move through this process to lay feet out there on the ground.
Is there like an anticipated weekend or day or just I think we had kind of went back and forth of saying it was going to be on a weekend.
Yeah, based on the last meeting, I think I was thought that we discussed Saturdays as the best option. And so I would basically send the doodle with a collection of Saturdays for options.
Okay, thanks.
And one other piece for discussion that I would like to bring up, I believe Lily, you made mention of this, that the current meeting times are not necessarily as agreeable as you would like. And so I would like to also hear from the remaining body whether or not the meetings as structured, the dates that are currently proposed for our meetings. I believe we have, is it November 9th and December 7th as the next two meetings outside of this site visit. Do those times work? Would you all like to see meetings less frequently than the current 2-week gap that we are looking at? If I can get some feedback.
We seem to have an awful lot of content to cover. So I would recommend we keep the cadence.
And was that you, Sharon?
That was me. I'm sorry. Yes.
No
we
worries.
also have the holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas coming. And I don't imagine anybody wants to meet during the holidays. I could be wrong.
No. No.
We can meet on Christmas Eve. It's my birthday.
This is all much more important than all that for me. I live across the street from the site. I have no problem with any days we want to meet. The holidays will not interfere with my attendance.
It will.
Does the standing Tuesday work for those of you in this meeting?
Yes.
Agree.
Yes.
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 Okay.
Yeah, and I think I didn't realize this is only going to be a monthly thing. I think I can miss my class 2 more times before the semester ends.
Sorry to do that to you.
Okay.
We'll try our best to work around it. And as always, the meetings are recorded. We'll make sure that you are involved in whatever feedback. If we can get all of these documents out to everybody ahead of time, that gives you an opportunity to share feedback in the event that you have to miss a portion or all of any meeting. Okay, ladies and gents, with that, we have closed out all of the items that are on our agenda for this evening. Are there any additional remarks or comments before we adjourn? Yes, Amy?
I just have one more comment I wanted to throw out there. You mentioned, Bob, a 100-foot tree buffer. Will there be any other types of sound barrier or sound kind of wall or anything like that to keep the, all the things that we already have from getting worse?
Well, I think that part of what we're going to talk about next time is sort of a noise study, so that we can know what kind of noises are being created, and then what things we can do to mitigate those. We don't want to come out there and we're trying to cover everything and not be rude and to our neighbors, right? So that next time we'll have some information around that, and we'll look again, as I mentioned, even lowering the grade on the other side of that tree buffer will create mass of earth, and that will help mitigate any kind of noise coming off the site. So we're looking at each and every little thing that we can do, so that we don't wind up having to build some giant wall that looks like heck, to buffer it. So we'd rather do it using the land, using the earth, using our placement of things. So it's in the cookbook. We're just not quite there yet.
I appreciate your thoughts and your sentiments. I mean, a big concern of mine is, of course, and I'm sure everybody else that lives in the direct vicinity, are, our property values. How is this going to affect us? So
my sincere hope is it's going to make them go up for you.
I hope so too.
But then you get to pay more taxes, though.
Yeah, well, there is that.
Right.
It cuts both ways at the end of the day, but the increased property values are certainly what we're looking for. We certainly don't want to
Yeah.
see diminished property values. And I think
No.
that we are, with all of the input that's being given here and the project as presented so far, we are on the right track to make sure that we are all protected moving forward. But we have to keep this debate and conversation going.
I agree 100%. The only thing that I changed there is it's a dialogue, not a debate. If we're all working to what the issues are, we'll get to the right answer at the end. So let's keep that up, and hopefully, we can continue to show that we're listening and reacting. And like I say, as you see and digest this, you'll have additional comments. Bring them back. If we can't do it, we're going to be honest and say, I don't know how we can do that. But if we can make it happen, we'll make it happen.
Thank you, Bob.
And I have a quick question. It's probably more for Marshall and Darren, but I was just listening to WABE today, and they were talking to somebody about training police officers in martial arts as a way to help with de-escalation. And we haven't discussed anything as far as too much of the programmatic activities of the police training. I know you guys have talked a lot about best practices, and that's guiding you and what's going to be taking place as far as how the police are doing. But at some point, if we could kind of get a little bit more of that research and that background, and just kind of have some insight into the tactics that are being used, and just, I think it's fair for everybody to be aware of, what ways that we are training the officers and these personnel, and whether they are, in progressive ways. So just wanted to bring that
Nicole,
up.
this is Darren. We'd be more than happy to do that. In fact, we could potentially even offer everyone on this committee to participate in our very next Citizens Police Academy. I think that would, hopefully this will line up with the time that we're in session. But in 2015, we began aligning ourselves with President Obama's 21st century initiatives, the 6 pillars. And we're also an accredited law enforcement agency. So I think we are always looking for an opportunity to highlight the training that we afford our officers. It's never stagnant. It is always arching toward progression, best practices. And so not only will we give you a snapshot of the training that we're offering now, but how do we assess it to ensure that it's progressing 6 months from now, 12 months from now? How do we inform that process? So at the appropriate time that Madam Chairwoman would like to us to present that, we would be more than happy to.
Cool. I appreciate it, Darren. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is wonderful. It looks like we might be able to give you all back 2 minutes of your evening.
And also, I got one thing.
I know it's not much. Go for it.
Go Braves.
Go Braves.
Go Braves.
There you go.
Definitely. Let's go Braves. With that, we will reconvene on November 9th, 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m.
Happy
this
Halloween.
Meeting. Happy Halloween. Yes, everybody.
Party animals.
And let's go Braves.
Thank you for all the information, Allison, all you guys. Thank you.
Hey, Nicole,
Yes,
it's Mary's
you,
birthday
everybody.
Friday night.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you to all
Yeah,
of you
thanks,
for
everyone.
presenting this evening and the wonderful dialogue that we've had this evening.
Do you need
That's
a motion
really
to
helpful.
adjourn?
Thank you.
With that,
Hey,
this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
And credit to the chairwoman. She did a great job.
Yes.
Thank
Good
Yay.
you.
job. Great job.
Nice job.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Good
Bye,
night.
everybody.